Yes.
Sleep sound in Jesus, my baby, my love. He'll keep you warm from the heavens above. As I lay you down in your bed for the night, Jesus holds you gently till morning is nigh. Sleep sound in Jesus, my baby, my love. He'll keep you warm from the heavens above. As I lay you down in your bed for the night, Jesus holds you gently till morning is nigh. That's it.
So, one thing like that we talked about earlier is my mom really loved to dance, and so she's like the one that introduced me to dance, and so like now I like really love it and stuff, and so that was like a really big like special part I had with my mom, was that we both really loved to dance. And she always used to like encourage me. Like sometimes I'd get frustrated with stuff, or I'd feel like I wasn't doing it good enough in dance and stuff, and she used to always like encourage me and tell me she'd work with me at home and stuff. And so it was like, it made it really special for me to have her, because she had a lot of experience in dance, and so it was really helpful for her to help me with it. And so now I couldn't imagine living without dance. So, yeah, that's all.
Hi, I'm Josh, and in case you didn't know it already. Let's see here. Some of you guys might know that I do play football at Smoky Mountain. That's probably the funnest thing I can do right now. It's really a great opportunity. Well, one thing that my mom always did for me was that she's always there to pick me up whenever I feel like down about it and I felt like I wasn't doing well and such. She would always remind me that, no matter what, you just have to focus on what you need to do and just play to the best of your abilities. And I've done that for quite some time now, and I'd be lying if I didn't say paid off. One thing that you'd also have to do is, when I would sometimes think about quitting the team, would be to encourage me, but also to give me a recommendation. I wouldn't be the kind of man I am now if I didn't have my mama and my dad and enough people to remind me of what's really important in life. That's not, well, football is fun, but that's not what's most important. It's not sports, athletics, money, all that stuff that the social media always stresses so much. It's this right here. People who care about you, friends, family, all that good stuff. She also introduced me to music, man. I really like that. Okay, so that's it.
my mom was probably the best role model I could ever ask for. She was, like you said earlier, the most selfless person I've ever met. We used to have to force her to go out and do something for herself, or to buy something for herself, or just whatever. She never wanted to do anything for herself. It was always about us and other people. She was very supportive of anything I wanted to do. When I was trying to decide if I wanted to go to high school or early college, she didn't push me either way. She said, "You do what you want to do, and I'll support you either way." Same thing went for anything I wanted to do, soccer tryouts or chorus solos or anything. And it was for all of us, and not even my siblings, but my cousins and close friends. She was always very, very, very supportive. It's a very role model.
Renee lives in Maggie Valley now, and she was Jennifer's roommate in the last year before she married David. So she knows Jenny really well. I was Jenny's college choir director, and now I'm going to stop talking because I'll get choked up. I'm going to sing. Jenny would like this.
Then
treasure to all of us. You know, Jenny, the one thing that I think everybody in this room could ever say about Jenny, going through David, going through her own treatments, I would see her every time I saw her. She just came, I just saw her 3 weeks ago, and every time you walked into the room, not only was she always smiling, I don't think the smile ever went away. I always wondered if when she was asleep, she was smiling. So she would come up to you, and it wouldn't matter if you saw her yesterday or 5 months ago, she would always go, "It is so good to see you," and give you a hug. And the very first thing out of her mouth was something about praising the Lord and encouraging you, something to do in your life. I mean, encouragement just flowed from her every moment. And these children are so blessed to have such an amazing foundation with their father, David, and their mom. And nobody can ever take that away from any of you. So this treasure you have in your heart will be there forever. I lost my father when I was 10, and I still, to this day, remember amazing lessons. And the greatest lesson she ever taught you was to love the Lord and turn to Him, and He will carry you through anything. And wouldn't you agree that your mom was the smiling, happiest person ever? So was she like that at home? I mean, everybody loves her.
75%.
75%? Well, the other percentage, she had to be sleeping because she had to be exhausted.
Sorry, I couldn't come alone, so we had to come together. I'm Maria Lyons, the director of Encore Dance, where Jenny taught. And I just want to tell you guys a story of how Jenny came to the studio. And interesting story. She brought the kids to dance, Elizabeth and Jesse, and she signed them up for a dance class. And she was over there, we were talking, and she goes, "Yeah, I used to take ballet lessons. I danced competitively for, Bill Fletcher," and she told me all these stories. And I stopped listening, and because I was thinking, what was I going to say to her next? And that question was, I need a ballet instructor. And of course, Jenny's eyes were really, really big, and she said, "Well, let me pray about that." And of course, she prayed about it, and she came back, and she said, "Well, God really spoke to me, and I really like what you guys are doing here at Encore Dance with, blending God and with the dance, interpretive dance, and all that. And I feel like I really want to be a part of that in a big way." So she accepted my offer and picked up our ballet classes. And so as time went on, she taught ballet. She was with me for 5 years, and we became really close. And then this past year, we got to talking a little bit more. And through all of this, you do life together. You get to know one another. And we started talking about her college days. She was telling me some things, and she's like, "I have a degree in, early childhood education, and I used to teach for a daycare." And so my next question was, "Would you like to take the preschool classes this next year?" At which point she always said, "Let me pray about that." And I come to find out from my staff here, they told me later that Miss Jenny had felt in her heart that I was going to ask her to teach preschool that year. And she did, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience for all involved. Our preschoolers were just blessed to have her as their preschool instructor. And anyone that had her through ballet or who helped out through theater and all of that, and our trips back and forth to Narnia and so forth. But Jenny was a big blessing to the studio and to the whole staff there. And a big blessing to me, because a lot of times, anybody that's had a business understands the ups and downs of that business. And Jenny would come along and she'd always say, "How you doing today, Maria?" Because I was really open with her sometimes about, "I'm really having a down day. I don't know if God really wants me to continue with this. Do I stay? Do I go? What do I do?" And she would always say, "You know what? I've been praying for you. And I just feel like this is what God wants you to do. Keep at it. Stay with it. God has brought you to it, and He will provide a way for you to keep going and to keep that vision in your heart that He originally gave you." And that's where we are. And that's who we are. And we're going to stay there, even though my encourager isn't there anymore. Now she's standing beside of me as a guardian angel. And that's it. but love them. You guys can see.
Wow. In order for you to understand what I'm about to tell you concerning Pastor Jeannie, we have to go back and talk about Pastor David. Now, we sat under their pastorship for some years, about 20 years ago. Now, if you know anything about Pastor David was a surgeon in the spirit. And Pastor Jenny, she was the nurse in the spirit. So anytime God wanted to do surgery on you, he used Pastor David. And it was a relief to go to Pastor Jenny afterwards to get some sort of consolation and relief. Well, it was some, let me say this. Pastor David was a passionate preacher. In fact, a lot of times he would bring show and tell Sunday morning. And I remember one morning he brought a chainsaw to church. And I'm not going to go any further, but a lot of us who sat under their mentorship and leadership remember the rest of that story. But I remember one Sunday morning Pastor David was preaching, and he was basically fed up with how people took the Word of God for granted, and they just applied the Word of God according to the lifestyle they wanted to live. And he opened up his Bible and he started ripping out pages out of his Bible and just tossed them to the side. Well, he got to the point to his message where he took that Bible and he just flinged it right down the middle of the aisle. And on the back, where you came into the church, there was a table. And that Bible rested on that table as if somebody had set it down and opened it. And what made things worse was that there was a lady who used to go to our church. She had the biggest hairdo, all right? And that lady sat right in Pastor David's line of sight. So when he threw that Bible, you saw this hairdo go over to the side and back this way. I mean, if any time you sat under Pastor David and Jenny's leadership, you would understand where I'm coming from. Well, I have to say this. Back in the day, when we were, like I said, under their pastorship, we had got, my job had basically merged with a bigger company. And so I had to go re-interview for my job. And in order for me to keep my job, I had to move to Florida and move the family down there, which was good because my family was from Jacksonville. And my company wanted to hire us in Jacksonville, Florida. Well, I started going down there, and my family was left up here putting things in order while I went to work to Jacksonville. And I got down there, and me and my wife started talking, and we just didn't feel at peace about going to Jacksonville. So I told my boss, I said, it's just not going to work out down here. I said, we feel like we still belong up in Cashiers at the Ark Church. And so I left my job, I left my family, and came back, and we felt like God wasn't finished with us from being under the tutelage and pastorship of Pastor David and Jenny. And I went to Pastor David, I said, I feel like we're married in a way. And I took off my wedding ring and handed it to Pastor David, not knowing when I'd get it back. But I just want you kids to know how much your parents instilled inside of me. I could always go to Pastor Jenny and get what I needed from the Lord. Amen.
Hi, I'm Priscilla. I'm a very close friend of Jesse's. I just wanted to say one thing. She used to teach me ballet, and even if it was just
we were doing class or something, every single day she would just come up to me and give me just a hug. And I'd be like, what's this for? And she'd be, just want to hug you.
We're Eric and Doris Deadweiler, and we moved to the mountains about 8.5 years ago. And maybe a few weeks after we moved up, the Lord led us to Ark Church, and that's when we met Dave and Jenny. And of course, our lives have not been the same since. And we don't regret it yet. But why don't you?
Well, it was, we used to run an inn right in the middle of Casher's, Laurelwood Inn. And there was one day when it was booked up, and it was a Sunday, and we weren't going to make it to the service. And so I called, I think it was Jenny on the cell phone, and I apologized up and down, and I went to go out, come out of the laundry room and start on the rooms. We didn't have any housekeepers. They were all called off sick. And so Eric and I were new to the job, and we were going to roll up our sleeves and just go out and clean. And this green Honda minivan pulls up, and out jumps Pastor David and Jenny. And they said, we canceled service, and I believe the kids went with Maureen. And so we got the laundry out of the rooms, and we were getting ready to start cleaning when we did have one housekeeper show up. And then, but the things that Pastor David and Jenny taught me about, I felt like Peter when Jesus came to wash his feet, because I said I couldn't have my pastors do this and serve me. But that was their heart. They taught us what church was about. What it wasn't church, it was about serving, what Jesus taught. And that was their heart. It was the way they lived their lives. And especially, there would be a time when I had something difficult, I would call Jenny, no matter what, and she would just always have some kind of word of encouragement. She was a mentor to our daughter, Jeannie, and she couldn't be here right now, but, you know, we would, even after we moved from the hotel, we would run into Jenny with kids somehow on our day off. We would be down the mountain, and this is after Pastor David went home, and there would always be some kind of, divine appointment. She'd always greet us with a hug and a smile, and we would always catch up, and I know I'm going to miss that.
Yeah, to make the point of what she was saying, we'd come to Silva different days of the week, different times of the day, different places, and still run into Jenny, no matter what. So it was like something God was doing. We couldn't avoid it. But I want to say to the children, it says in the Bible, do not remove the ancient landmarks which your fathers have set. And so your parents are not just your natural parents, they're your spiritual parents as well. And they set some great landmarks in your lives. Things that you'll need to remember as you grow, as you encounter things in life. As you look back and think of the things that they taught you and spoke into your life, put into your spirits and your souls and your minds, and say, what did Mom and Dad say about that? Because it's kind of the same thing as, what did God say about that? Because that's what they said. Just like Jesus went around saying, I only do what I see my Father do, and I only say what I hear my Father say. There's very few people that I've ever known that you could say that about. And that was David and Jenny, your parents. So you need to remember those landmarks that they put in your life. One other thing, the pastor had mentioned that Jenny had two passions, but music was another great passion in her life. And not long after we moved to the mountains, the Lord began to stir into us in the area of music and in a lot of different ways. And so we talked to Jenny about it. David was really sick a lot of times, and we couldn't really talk to him much about it, but she encouraged us so strongly to pursue that because she knew it was the Lord. And so one of the first things that I did is I built a dulcimer for Doris, her first instrument. And Jenny allowed me to use a closet in the church. It was a room about half the size of this platform here. To use as long as I wanted to build whatever I wanted to do. And you just don't know what that could mean to a person who God has said, do something, and you have no place to do it. And then someone just provides you with what you need. It's God's grace. And so now we're writing music, and we're singing in church, and we're doing things, and it's all because one woman had the courage to say yes. And so we just thank the Lord for her and David and what they've been to us. Thank you.
We're the Scanlons, and we have to go off what Mike said. The story starts with David. It's always David. David liked to remind me every day that I was living in sin because I was living with my boyfriend. He begged me every day to please come to church. No, he'd eat my food, he'd leave, he'd come back the next day, please come to church. Well, they were having a revival, and I finally gave in because David was not giving in. So we went to the Ark, we met some beautiful families. I got the pleasure of actually living with Jenny for a little bit, and you talk about selflessness. Satan tried everything under the sun for me not to move in with Jenny and David. Broken ankle, everything. Here I'm thinking I'm a burden, I can't go live with this family, they live in a little house, I can't do it, I have a daughter. Well, Jenny came and took me off the couch with a broken ankle and took me home. We just got some great people, great family, and we love you guys.
Broken ankle, by the way, was my fault. From a water fight that we had. David and Jenny were my godparents. And the definition of a godparent is somebody that builds you up as a child and spiritually leads you toward the Lord. And that's exactly what they did for me. And Jenny was also my first dance instructor and was the one that helped me fall in love with dance. And as a young teenager, I struggled with a lot of things. And Jenny was my counselor as well. And when she found out that I had a passion for music and dance, she took that and gave me a way to express myself to the point where I thought I never could, for the Lord and for myself. Jenny saved me and my family, and we're really going to miss her.
I wasn't going to say anything, but y'all needed to know a little bit of the personal side of David and Jenny. They loved each other. And as Pastor said here, the day they got married was just after the blizzard of the century. And it was all David could do to wait to that day. And after the ceremony, they didn't waste any time to get in their car and come on down the mountain. Jenny said, he never drove so fast in all of his life. And those were icy roads. And then they were separated for a while. And Jenny didn't want David to forget about her when he went off to the CIA, which was the Culinary Institute of America. And so she had that glamour picture made. And when he set it up in his room, his roommate couldn't believe that was his wife. And David didn't forget about her. The moment that he had some time off, they got together right after her graduation, and Jenny said it was even better than the honeymoon. So they had fun together, as well as they worked together, as well as they loved God together. And they're loving Him right now.
Hi, my name is Reba,
going to speak, but everybody that has spoken of Jenny from about the time she and David got married and forward. I knew Jenny when she and her mother moved to Haywood County from Florida. She was in my class at elementary school, and she looked a lot like you did. I knew. Said I was going to do this without crying. You kids amaze me with the strength that God has given y'all to stand up here and speak. This is something that a grown adult has a hard time doing, but God has given you the strength to do that. When Jenny first came to Juneau Elementary School, I was never really an outgoing person, but I loved people, and Jenny and I became friends, and she was often, you know, sometimes I would think, why is this girl so happy? We're in elementary school, we're trying to learn stuff, why is she so happy? That's all you can say about her. There were times in my life when I would be going through things, struggling. I was a Christian, I've been a Christian since I was 5 years old. But Jenny was the one, she was always the one that you had to try to talk into doing things. Where I was the one that was kind of more of a leader of, hey, let's do this. Oh, I don't know.